on Alive, I am going to be sharing stories with you about women dealing with breast cancer in cities all across America. Today, we are in Boston, Massachusetts, where Kelley Tuthill is well known to Bostonians. She's been a reporter on WCVB for almost 2 decades, covering stories about this bustling city until one day, she was the story. Tell me about the day that you felt the lump, because you found yours yourself, correct?
I did. So I was just weaning my new baby, and I felt a lump, and I thought for sure it was something related to breastfeeding. So I made the appointment to go back and see the OBGYN, and I can remember sitting waiting for her to come in, and I was starting to get frustrated because it was taking a while. I thought I should just leave. Forget that. What's it going to be? It's no big deal, right? I thought it was a clogged milk duct. And she made the decision once she felt it. She thought it seemed significant, or at least worthy of getting checked out, and she sent me in for further testing. So she sent me for a mammogram and an ultrasound. And that decision saved my life, because she could have just as easily said, come back in a few months, we'll check it out, doesn't feel like anything. But I always say that doctor saved my life. Breast cancer was not on my radar. Breastfeeding was on my radar. Babies were on my radar. Breast cancer was not on my radar.
And you had a new baby, what, 6 weeks old or so?
She was by then almost 6 months old.
6 months old?
You know,
6 months old.
Right.
And then you had another daughter, what, 2 years old?
Yes.
This new mommy.
Yep. And
so what happened then? Did they find it in the mammogram or the ultrasound?
I made the appointment for the Friday before Christmas. Oh. Because I didn't think it would be anything. So I didn't feel there was any reason to put it off. You know, I just took the first available whenever they said they could do it. So I went in, and it was Friday afternoon of the long weekend before Christmas. And they did the mammogram, and then they said, you know, wait, and then you're thinking, no, this isn't good. So you're sitting out there, and you're waiting. And then they said, we're going to now do an ultrasound. And the woman told me on the spot it was breast cancer. And I kind of really never got over that, because it was so shocking that you kind of wanted it delivered a little more gently. She knows, I've told her. But the radiologist told me right away that she knew. And she said, I think she might have said that it's a tumor. I go, well, but not like cancer tumor, right? And she was malignant. I had sent my husband to CVS across the street with the baby. And then when he came back, it's like, you're not going to believe this. And unbelievably, they got me a surgeon, you know, that was still there, this amazing surgeon, who at least could sit us down and talk to us about what we were facing. But this is all in the course of just what you thought was a quick test. All of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're talking about surgery and breast cancer and treatment. And it was really, really overwhelming. They just told me it was clearly malignant cancer. I had what looked like multiple tumors in the same breast, my right breast. And then they said, you'll have to come back and we'll do the biopsy. So that was Christmas, knowing you had cancer, didn't know much about it, didn't know if you were going to live or die, and trying to just keep it together for Christmas, for your little kids, for your family, your parents. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody. How could you do that? It's one thing that your Christmas is ruined, but I couldn't ruin everybody else's.
I totally understand, because it happened right before my children's birthdays and graduations, and a daughter having a baby shower, and I decided not to tell anybody.
Right, how could you?
Your children were so young. I mean, you can't really tell a 6-month-old, but I mean, even a 2-year-old. How did you kind of approach telling close family and children?
So finally, by the end of Christmas, I started to tell my mother, because I just knew she'd want to know, and she came with me to the biopsy. So she came the next day, and it was hard. I mean, a mother doesn't expect to have to support her 36-year-old through cancer treatment. You know, that's not something she was thinking about. You might think if somebody has trouble getting pregnant, or a divorce, or something that might come up in the 30s. She's the mother of 4 daughters. But I don't think she ever thought at that point she'd be dealing with breast cancer.
Okay, an obvious question. Did she have breast cancer, or any of the other daughters and grandmother? So no family history.
And so I did the genetic testing because of so many women in my family. Yeah. And it's negative. So I'm not a carrier of the gene.
So you were one of so many of us who thought, it's not in my family history, I'm healthy, I exercise, I eat pretty well, and so it's not going to happen to me.
Right. And then you find out that's basically a myth, that most people don't have a genetic link to breast cancer.
I'm glad to know another journalist has to say that. I mean, I really honestly thought that I was not vulnerable to breast cancer because I didn't have any family history. And you know, now I think back on it, I think, wait a minute, didn't you ever do a story on that?
Well,
How
Dr. Tim Johnson, a dear friend of both of ours, will tell you your biggest risk factor is being a woman. And I don't think most people think about that, but the single biggest risk factor for breast cancer is just being a woman.
And every age is it's
And
being older.
Right.
Those are the two top.
Right.
And as we're learning now, even, you know, your percentage of body fat, you know, clearly they're showing now that the obesity epidemic in this country is probably linked to the increase in breast cancer. But when you got your diagnosis, what did they tell you your treatment was going to be?
So they
for your type, what was your
my
type?
type? So I was triple positive. So estrogen positive, progesterone positive, and HER2 positive.
Wow.
So we're the opposites.
I was triple negative.
We're the opposites.
You were triple positive.
Right.
So I know what that meant for me, but what did it mean for you?
So what it meant for me is sort of the opposite. There was a lot of treatment I had to do. And I got Herceptin, which is that targeted therapy that you hear so much about. And so it wasn't a particularly difficult treatment to take, but it's a year-long infusion that you take. So I started with my surgery, which I know is different from what you did. I think it's changed a bit since when I had it, which was 2006. I think more people have their surgery second now. But when I was going through it, we decided to go the surgery route first. Also, I had multiple tumors in one breast. There wasn't going to be enough tissue to save, so it was a mastectomy right off the bat. So when you know that, you're not trying to conserve for a lumpectomy. So when they tell you that, it's kind of like, just get it out of me. You know, if we got to do this, let's do it. What I didn't realize was I had enough time to think about reconstruction. You get in this panic, like, let's get the surgery going. I don't need a breast. Well, who needs a breast? I don't need cancer is what I don't need. And you're panicked. And then somebody, thank God, told me, slow down. Look at your options. You're only 36. You're probably going to want reconstruction. And so I did catch my breath a little bit and started to look into that. And I ended up having a mastectomy with the tram reconstruction, meaning they used the stomach fat left over from the baby that I had just had and some muscle and recreated the breast all at once. Because when you have young kids, you don't want to keep going back for more treatment. I knew I was going to still have to have radiation, which is unusual for people with a mastectomy. Usually they can skip that because they've gone aggressive. In my case, they didn't want to do that. Probably the age and the aggressiveness of the cancer, they wanted everything. So that limited reconstruction too. Now all of a sudden, if you do the implant and they have to radiate it, it can often make the radiation ruin the implant.
So you have to wait. If you want to do any kind of reconstruction, you have to wait.
There's so many options. It's very confusing to people. But given that I was going to need radiation, given that I favored having it all at once, the tram reconstruction, and I had stomach fat. Some people are lucky enough not to have enough stomach fat.
Look at the bright side. You got a tummy tuck
I
at the same time.
got a tummy tuck at the same time. So for me, that was a good procedure. There's also one called DEEP, which is just another version of that, of the tummy tuck kind of procedure. It's a little more specialized. It takes a little longer. It's more popular now, I think, than when I had mine. But either way, it's the flap kind of surgery. Some people do the back. Some people do buttocks. They can do fat and tissue from your buttocks and make a breast. So there's options. So I guess it doesn't matter where you are, what stage you're at, you have to make sure you consider those options. Otherwise, you may be left with a scar and not reconstruction and regret it later.
Because you're a journalist, did you kind of attack it in that way? I get asked this all the time, and I mean, to me, journalism went out the window. You're just, all of a sudden, you're a patient.
Right. And people think somehow because you're a journalist, you're tougher than other people, but at the end of the day, you're a person. And it doesn't matter whether you're a journalist or a firefighter or a police officer, and you get diagnosed, that armor goes away because you're afraid of dying. So you're human. And that's like the ultimate leveling off in terms of, being one of just all these women, 40,000, women that we lose every year to this disease. All of a sudden you fear you'll be one of them. 200,000 women diagnosed. You're part of this group. And journalism didn't give me any protection from that. It didn't make me any smarter. I definitely then started researching, and then there's pros and cons to that, because the internet, you're a person. You're not a journalist detached trying to figure out a story or a problem. You're a person, and when you start to read, HER2's really aggressive. Without Herceptin, the women, fared so poorly without this. Herceptin gives them a lot of hope. You start reading about lymph nodes. Oh, well, I had lymph nodes. That must be bad, and you can't sleep. So one of the best things people tell you is stay off the internet.
Yeah.
Do a little research, maybe spend most of your time finding a good team and then trust them.